Greetings and salutations, Dopey Nation. I wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. But bad desire is all I ever had. And I wanna take a ride up in the sky and watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I wanna see a Learjet liner take a dive just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. And I wanna be good so bad. I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. But bad desire is all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's high noon where I stand.
Okay, so my story is it's very similar to I guess a lot of people's stories, but I grew up on Long Island, and we moved like every 6 months or so. So like one time I counted how many schools from first grade to 12th grade, and it came out to 12 different schools. So the problem with that was I was already kind of like alienated from people my own age, and like I always felt a little bit out of place to begin with. And then just being like the new kid all the time was just it was horrific. And I think like what wound up happening is after I got used to the luxury of like being able to leave total fucking messes wherever because I knew I was going to leave. So I started taking advantage of that and like just, burning all these bridges, because I was like, well, I'll just move to this other neighborhood and nobody will remember any of the shit that I did, especially when I got to that age when people started like dating or like, whatever you call dating in 7th or 8th grade, whatever that is. I was already doing, just bad shit, just ghosting and like all kinds of like really the whole moving around and not having any roots was where I think I developed a lot of my, what people in the rooms refer to as addict behaviors, I guess. And the thing is like, I wasn't really using during any of this time. I was just had the worst fucking behaviors. And as all this was going on, I was getting older. So like 10th, 11th grade, I developed like some serious depression, where it was just like, I kept wondering almost every day whether like I was really into being alive anymore. And that was like the thing that my whole 11th and 12th grade was pretty much overshadowed by that, though, trying to figure out if it was really worth it. I was I was asking myself very big questions, which is kind of funny because like I feel like I got lighter and more childlike as I got older. But when I was a kid, everything was like a Russian novel, everything was like so dark and heavy and, so anyway, I went to school in New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, and I smoked a joint for the first time, and that was it. I mean, this like weight that was around my neck for my entire life finally dropped off, and like all the things that I thought, that I hated about life was just immediately gone. And I realized, I had my first kind of like, it was like a trippy feeling where everything kind of fell into a different perspective the first time I got stoned. And I realized that like all the shit that I tortured myself about none of it was real. It was all just like made up, you know, I was torturing myself with like terrible self-talk and things like that. So once I smoked that joint and felt what it felt like to not be that fucking miserable, that I just made a deal with myself that like I was never going to not be high on something ever again, you know, because to me it wasn't worth it to be alive in that other state. But this I could deal with. I could do this every day and be fine. So it started out with smoking, and then I got into amphetamines, and I started a band after I went to school to be a professor of English, and then decided I wanted to be Kurt Cobain instead. So I stopped going to school and started a band, and so I was taking amphetamines and doing a lot of writing, and I had a band that was using dope, but I wasn't really doing that at the time, until this girl started hanging out with us. And she came up from the city, she graduated from FIT. She was the whole heroin chic thing, and she was beautiful. And you know, I mean, it was the kind of situation where if she was like, you know, sticking her hand in fire and was like, oh, this is, you know, what I like to do, I would have done the same thing. So like, I saw her and decided that whatever she was doing, I was going to do it. And then, you know, I was going to get her somehow. And I, you know, I did. And so then I started experimenting with dope. And luckily this was a time when like people weren't dying. So like there was no fentanyl yet. So like you could experiment with dope and have like a bunch of bad shit happen to you along the way, but you know, you'd basically survive, which is what happened. So I got really strung out, and we were a horror show. We would like fight and have these terrible scenes in the street all the time. And like everybody knew us, and it was like, you know, we were just you know, the village horror show pretty much. But so finally, I realized that like that was going nowhere, and I had to get away from her, because I felt like if I got away from her, I could stop doing dope. And so she was a little bit nuts. So she would usually like cause a major scene, and I would always go back to like to prevent the cops from finding us or like coming out to, you know, like, so she would get it to the point where like there was going to be police intervention, and I was always scared we were going to wind up getting arrested. So like I would just quietly go back, and this kept happening. So until finally I decided to get rid of all my shit and be completely clean, not have anything on me, and wait for her to do that thing, and then call the cops, and then get an order of protection. So that was my plan to get away from that situation, and it worked. So she came up to find me at the hotel that I left, and she was banging on the windows and banging on like crazy. I called the cops. The cops came. I got an order of protection. So it seemed like I was on my way to, you know, changing my situation. And then the next day, the dope dealer found out that she was living in the house by herself, and he held her hostage all night, and he raped her. And then she came to find me the next day, and that was life-changing, because well, I mean, to witness what somebody looks like after something like that, and to know that like I left her there in that house, and like it fucked with my head so bad. So we got back together that day, and we wound up going to the methadone clinic together under the advice of the detective that was, you know, that came and helped out after the assault. So that was it, man. Now I was on methadone, which was like, we were both on methadone, and we were, you know, and just, we were one of those methadone couples that would like go every day and get the shit. And man, this is so difficult to say, but I let that go on for 10 years of like, I did not know that was way worse than dope because I did not know how to get out of that situation. And like my solutions were so like fantasy like I thought, okay, well, maybe I can get into a really bad car accident and be in a coma for 6 weeks and then wake up. This was like shit that I was actually trying to figure out, you know, and then I don't have to like go through the, yeah. So I actually did wind up going cold turkey off of methadone after 10 years. And I started going to meetings. That all, so I think I said that backwards. I went to my first meeting and then I stopped drinking methadone. So somehow I managed to like not go to rehab, not go to detox, just stop taking methadone and go to meetings every night. And so it was like the worst 6 weeks of my entire life. It was like, I mean, I'm sure if anybody ever kicked methadone, they know that like you go weeks and weeks without sleeping, even like for a second. And people don't know, like most normal people don't realize that that's possible, but it is possible. And I remember taking like entire bottles of Tylenol PM, and like you would just lay there in bed, and the Tylenol PM made you feel like you were chained to the bed, like you couldn't move, but you were not going to sleep. You just felt like you had like this gigantic bowling ball on top of your body. So I kicked methadone and I got very plugged into the NA, and that lasted for like, as soon as I kicked and I got my teeth fixed, that was it. I mean, for me, it was like, it just became a place to find dates. So I went right back to like my old behavior patterns and like just went from one person to the next, just breaking up with this person. When this newcomer came in, I would go out with them, which I thought was not a big deal because I was a newcomer too. So I figured, well, it's not like I'm, 13 stepping them because, I only have a couple months. And, all those 12-step people are like, oh, you're going to go out. This is how you're going to go out. They were right. I did. Like I said, after my first year, my celebration, I wound up going to the Bronx with somebody that I met in the rooms, and we wound up, and it was like years before I got back in again. So that was like, I guess after relapsing and losing everybody around me, which is what happens like after using for, a long period of time, I was right back to being completely alone and like very sick, like not just sick, dope sick, but like I was already 40 at that point, and like the doctors were telling me that my endocrine system was blacking out basically. Like I was having all kinds of weird problems, and I kept going to the emergency room, and they kept admitting me and giving me like antibiotics and IVs, because I had no insurance. So they just like got me to the point where like I didn't die, and then they discharged me, and it just kept happening. And finally one day, August 25th, 2010, I went back to the rooms again, and I kind of knew, I was done at that point. Like it's weird because it's one of those things where like the people around you, because they've watched you, they've watched you the way you live for so long that like you could never tell anybody that you knew you were done because nobody would believe you. It was like one of those things that you just kept to yourself. But I knew that day that was it, and I was right because that was it. I was done. And so I kind of enjoyed being clean for a little while, but like it says in my book, like after a while, just being clean and being poor and just not having anything to look forward to was not enough. And so this is the corny part. I started listening to all these like these like life improvement tapes, which was like, I don't know why, but I was really vibing with it at the time. Like it was giving me hope. Like I needed to feel like something was going to be better than just living in a boarding house and like being clean. There needed to be something else for me. So like, that's when I quit smoking cigarettes and I went to CDL school and I learned how to do something to make like real money, like real people. And like, and it completely changed my life. And I met somebody and we had children. And this time I was clean and present and like still, you know, I'm actually like a real father that like is present in my kid's life and not like looking for where I'm going to get my next one while they're trying to show me their, you know, something that they drew. You know, it's an amazing, like, there are times, and this is so hard to admit, there are times when I will look at these kids, these little girls, they're like 6 and 8, and I will have this like flash of light go through my body where I realize none of this has to be happening. You know, I could very well be dead, and like, and I should have been, you know, statistically. And the fact that like I don't need to use, and like I'm like, you know, I'm a father that's like supporting my children. You know, that's a crazy sick feeling. And like, you know, things didn't work out with their mother, which that shit never works out. But like, but we're still really good friends. And I took the pain from that separation, and I made another goal of like, you know, I always imagined that I was going to be an author when I was a kid, or you know, and I never got my band signed. So I was like, well, I need to like do something. I need to get signed by somebody doing something. I don't know what the hell. So that's when I made the goal of like, you know, writing the book proposal and just like, you know, dealing with the crazy amount of rejection and like, and negativity. And like, I actually dropped a sponsor at one point because I wasn't sure if anybody was ever going to sign me. And he was like putting negative thoughts in my head, like, oh, you know how hard this is that you're trying to do. Well, you know, there's a million people out there trying to write books and blah, blah, blah. So like at one point I was like, you know what? I don't need this negativity. I'm just going to drop this guy. So like, you know, but I mean, it was one of those things where it was like when I quit methadone, I went into a different place. Like getting through that 6 weeks without going to rehab, I needed to go to a different place in the universe. I don't know if like I'm making any sense, but it was the same thing with the book. I needed to go, like, I wasn't going to take no from, you know, from anybody. I had to do it. And no matter how many people were like, you know, oh, we don't do memoirs. And I was, you know, and I was like, it's not a fucking memoir. It's a self-help book for people in recovery. And like, a lot of times people weren't paying attention to you. They were just like, oh no, sorry, we don't do memoirs for nobodies. Like, but it doesn't matter, because the point of the story is I never stopped trying. And I got signed and I got an advance and I wrote a book and it came out, even though it came out during COVID and I didn't get to go on tour or anything. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The thing is like, what I wrote the book about was illustrated from my getting the book published. So in other words, I self-actualized the entire book. So I kept saying, look, you're reading this book right now because I went, like, I did not stop until somebody signed me. And it's true. It's like, that was like the main point of my book, was that like, you know, if we survive and we can get to this point, that's like, that should set a precedent for all of us, that like, we can do anything. I mean, the most ridiculous dreams you can think of. I have never left this country before. And on Sunday, I'm flying to Greece. And like, I used to listen to people in meetings tell these stories and be like, go fuck. But like, it's true, man. I'm like, I'm gonna go see Europe next week. Like something that was always like, there was definitely periods of my life where I thought I was definitely gonna die before I ever got to see Europe. And like, God forbid, hopefully the plane doesn't crash, but it looks like it's going in that direction. It looks like I'm going to be able to see ancient civilization in person and go write poetry out in Greece by myself and go eat good food and just hang out for a week. Something like, just there's really nothing that you can't do if you just decide you're going to do it. Everything else is just details after that. And I guess with that, I will end.
Wanna take a walk around the world, wonder would it do me any good, till I get some money in my pockets, and I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. I wanna be good so bad, wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Wanna take a ride up in the sky, watch as airplanes just passing by. And I wanna see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. I wanna be good so bad, I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. In my burned out basement listening to the Dopey Show. Home friends I had are on this little radio. I keep checking on my pulse because it feels like I might die, but the thought of straightening up sounds so much better when you're high. And I wanna be good so bad, I wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had.